Have you ever walked into a museum, maybe glanced at a painting and just thought, what is this?
Uh-huh.
And why does it look so different from that other painting, even though they're, from the same time?
Or maybe you're scrolling online looking at two pieces and you can't quite put your finger on why they feel so distinct.
Exactly. If that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone.
Yeah.
The role of art styles is, well, it's endlessly fascinating, but let's be honest, it can also be a little confusing sometimes.
Yeah, it often feels like everyone else is speaking some kind of secret code when they talk about art, right? And you're just nodding along, hoping you'll catch on.
Totally. But really, understanding artistic style, that's the key. It unlocks that secret and helps make genuine sense of the whole vast art world.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Our mission is to take you on a deep exploration of artistic style, what it really is, how it works as an artist's visual signature.
Your fingerprint almost.
Yeah, their fingerprint. And crucially, how it's different from those broader art movements you might already know a bit about. We're basically here to give you that shortcut, spark those aha moments without the information overload.
And for this deep dive, we've pulled together insights from, well, a really great stack of sources. We've got YouTube channels like Royal Skies, Curious Muse, Doctor Explained, Artist Strong, Sam Bozart's Victoria U.
Some really good ones there.
Yeah, plus resources from the National Gallery of Art and a great blog post from Blog Quiz Shop. So hopefully you'll be ready to see art with completely new eyes after this.
Okay, so let's jump right in. When we talk about art, style and movement get thrown around a lot, sometimes, interchangeably, but they're really quite distinct, aren't they? How do we start untangling that?
Absolutely. That's a great starting point. The best way to think about an artistic style is like an artist's personal signature. It's their unique individual way of seeing the world and then, translating that vision using colors, shapes, lines. It really focuses on how an artwork is depicted.
So the specific choices, the techniques, the visual stuff that makes you go, that looks like a Van Gogh or something.
Exactly. The distinctive methods, the visual features that make their work immediately recognizable as theirs.
Got it. So it's very much about the individual artist, the unique choices, the hand behind the work.
Precisely. Now, an art movement that's much broader. Think of it more like a prevailing trend shared by many artists during a specific period.
Right, like Impressionism or Cubism.
Exactly. It involves a whole group of artists who share ideas, maybe methods, often even a philosophy or a common artistic goal. So while movements can definitely shape individual styles, no doubt about that, they're distinct things. One's the individual fingerprint, the other's more like the prevailing wind of an era.
That's a great way to put it. The fingerprint versus the prevailing wind. I like that.
Yeah.
But what specifically makes up this individual fingerprint? What are the core bits that combine to create an artistic style?
Well, when we break it down, there are several key factors. We usually start with the visual elements.
Okay.
That's, how an artist manipulates form, color, line, shape, texture, space. Think of those distinct, visible brushstrokes of an impressionist painter, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe the precise, clean lines you see in a minimalist sculpture. Very different visual approaches.
And then there are the actual methods they use.
Exactly. The techniques and processes. Is it oil painting with lots of layers? Is it the fluidity you get with watercolor? Or maybe the crispness of digital media? The how of making it matters.
Okay, so beyond the purely visual stuff, what other consistent threads might run through an artist's work that help define their signature style?
That's where subject matter and thematic consistency often come in. Artists frequently revisit certain types of subjects or explore recurring themes throughout their career.
Like Rembrandt and portraits.
Perfect example. His fascination with the human face is a consistent thread. We also have expression and personal narrative, the emotions and the worldview the artist conveys through the work. Style often reflects authentic personal experience, adding this layer of meaning that's unique to that creator.
And how much does the world outside the studio actually shape these very personal signatures? Because, no artist lives in a total vacuum.
Oh, hugely important. You're absolutely right. The cultural and historical context is vital. An artist is profoundly influenced by their background, their era, the societal forces swirling around them.
Makes sense.
And finally, there's often a philosophy or artistic intent underpinning it all, the underlying beliefs or goals guiding their choices. Maybe they're using abstraction to try and express universal truths, or maybe they're using realism for social commentary.
Wow.
All these elements, they kind of weave together to create that recognizable artistic signature.
It's incredible how much emotion can be conveyed just through those visual choices.
Mhm.
How does an artist's emotional expression actually, shape their style? Sometimes without us even consciously realizing it when we look at it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. An artist's emotional state profoundly influences pretty much every choice they make. Think about their color palette, for instance.
Okay.
Vibrant reds and oranges often convey passion, excitement, maybe even anger, while, cool blues and greens might suggest calm or melancholy or peace.
And the way they actually apply the paint.
Absolutely. The brushwork itself speaks volumes. Strong emotions might lead to these vigorous, expressive, almost violent strokes,
Hmm.
whereas tranquil states could result in softer, more controlled, blended marks. Movements like expressionism are like perfect examples of this.
Right.
Artists in that movement intentionally distort form and color, specifically to intensify feelings and prioritize those subjective emotions over objective reality.
And then how do we, as viewers, pick up on that? How does a style become emotionally resonant for us? Sometimes it triggers our own feelings, doesn't it?
It does. It taps into universal human feelings through visual cues. Colors, as we said, have powerful psychological associations. Red means danger or passion. Blue can mean calm or sadness.
Hmm.
Brushwork, especially in styles like expressionism or even abstract expressionism, directly conveys the artist's emotional state. It almost pulls the viewer into that experience. Think about how Edward Munch's The Scream just makes you feel that raw anxiety.
Oh, definitely. It's visceral.
Yeah. And form and composition play a role too. Chaotic arrangements might suggest unease, while harmonious ones feel serene. Abstract styles are particularly powerful here because they don't dictate a specific subject. They allow viewers to project their own feelings onto the colors or shapes, making the experience deeply personal and subjective.
So it's like a two-way street. The artist expresses and we interpret through our own lens, often without needing words. That's actually a really profound connection when you think about it.
Exactly. And when artists manage to channel genuine emotion into their work, the resulting piece often communicates on a level that feels truly real and relatable, bridging gaps across generations and cultures.
Okay, so from those deep emotions conveyed through style, let's maybe shift gears slightly and take a quick walk through art history. Because there's just such a vast array of styles, right? From
Yeah.
ancient origins way up to what artists are doing right now. Each tells a unique story.
Indeed. And it's a journey that really reveals how humanity has continually found new ways to visually interpret the world around it, adapting to different beliefs, technologies, social structures. It's quite a ride.
So if we were to start way back at the very beginning of recorded art, where does that take us?
Well, we'd start with ancient art. That basically refers to any art created before the fall of the Western Roman Empire. So think of the monumental and intricate works from ancient Greece, Egypt, Babylon, India, China.
Huge scope.
Massive scope. Then, kind of running parallel to various historical periods, you have folk art. This is interesting because it isn't usually about individual expression in the way we think of it now. It's more about preserving culture and tradition within a community. It's about collective identity, and often it's highly functional too.
Right, things people actually used or that were part of rituals. Okay, after those ancient traditions, where do we see the next big shift? That famous turning point.
That would definitely be the Renaissance. It really flourished in Italy starting in the 1400s. It marked a very distinct stylistic period, drawing heavy inspiration from classical Greek and Roman art, emphasizing humanism, perspective,
The
naturalism.
big names, Michelangelo, Da Vinci.
Exactly, those masters. Following that, in 17th century Europe, we get Baroque art. This was often favored by the Catholic Church for its dramatic power. It's known for being extremely beautiful, incredibly detailed, and designed to inspire awe. Lots of intense emotion, sharp contrast, dynamic, sometimes chaotic compositions, and really rich colors.
Yeah, Baroque can be so opulent, almost overwhelming sometimes. And then we get a slightly lighter, more playful version with Rococo, is that right?
We're spot on. Rococo emerges in the 18th century. It's more ornamental, theatrical, lots of decoration with natural curves, think shells and foliage, often in light pastel colors. It's generally seen as less serious, maybe happier than Baroque, focusing on themes like love, leisure, aristocracy.
Hmm.
Moving into the 19th century, we find Romanticism. This emphasized intense emotions, individualism, and often glorified the past. It depicted passionate feelings like love, anger, horror, often with a very dramatic flair.
And then there's Art Nouveau, which I always recognize by those incredibly beautiful, organic, flowing lines that seem to pop up everywhere from posters to architecture.
Yes. Art Nouveau, from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, was this international decorative style, very strikingly inspired by natural forms, plants, flowers, insects sometimes. It's characterized by those signature curvy shapes, often in a really unique color palette: mustards, olives, deep reds, and asymmetrical patterns. It was really kind of rebellion against the rigidity of industrial structures that were taking over.
A reaction.
Definitely. And a personal favorite of mine from around that period, though different, is ukiyo-e, the Japanese art from the Edo era. This includes bijinga, which literally translates to beautiful person art, often depicting fashionable women in everyday scenes, woodblock prints usually.
Oh, fascinating. Okay, and then we enter the realm of modern. What exactly does modern art mean? Because the term itself can be a bit confusing, right? It doesn't mean art made today.
It definitely can be confusing. Counterintuitively, modern art actually refers to works created roughly from the 1860s up to the 1970s. It signifies this period where art began to consciously move away from traditional realistic depictions. It became much more experimental, often more colorful, exploring new ideas about form and representation. This is the kind of art you'd mainly find in museums like MoMA, for example.
Right. So what do we call art made more recently?
That's contemporary art. That's the term for new art, generally meaning art created within, say, the last 10 years or so, or within this current generation. It's constantly changing, it's profoundly affected by modern technology and global shifts, and it's always exciting because you never quite know what to expect next.
And finally, a style that's, well, it's become ubiquitous in public spaces, and it's constantly evolving too.
Yes, graffiti, often very colorful, sometimes seen as unrefined, but it's raw, incredibly dynamic, primarily found painted on public walls. Obviously, it's a really popular and constantly evolving style that challenges traditional notions of art venues and even authorship.
Wow, that's a whirlwind tour through history. Okay, now let's maybe zoom back in on how artists represent reality itself.
Yeah.
So there's this fascinating spectrum, isn't there? From depicting life exactly as it is to breaking away completely into pure abstraction.
Absolutely. This really gets to the heart of the artist's fundamental relationship with the visible world and how they choose to translate it onto canvas or into sculpture or whatever medium they're using.
So starting with realism, that's art that tries to capture reality just
Yeah.
as it is, right? No frills, no obvious interpretation.
Pretty much. Realism aims to depict reality without interpretation or overt stylization. It focuses on everyday life, often with meticulous detail. It emerged in the mid-19th century, partly as a reaction against art that was seen as too idealized or romanticized.
Like Courbet.
Exactly. Gustave Courbet is a key figure. His work is visibly a painting. You can see the brushstrokes. It's not a photograph. But it captures life truthfully. The artist's hand is present, but their goal is objective representation.
Okay, so then what's the fundamental difference between that and photorealism? Because that sounds like it's trying to be exactly like a photo.
It is. Photorealism takes that quest for reality a significant step further. Its goal is literally to reproduce a high-resolution photograph so precisely that the resulting artwork looks virtually indistinguishable from the photo itself.
Wow.
The artist's interpretation is minimized. They are meticulously replicating every detail, every shadow, every reflection, every texture with astonishing fidelity. Richard Estes' painting Cafe Express is a fantastic example. It really makes you do a double take and wonder if it's actually a photograph.
And then we have hyperrealism.
Mhm.
So if photorealism aims for exact reproduction, how does hyperrealism manage to take it to the next level? What's that extra dimension it brings?
That's a great question because it highlights a subtle but important distinction. While hyperrealism is also technically incredibly precise, it isn't strictly chained to the source photo in the same way.
Oh.
Hyperrealist artists often add a layer of emotional evocativeness, maybe a narrative element or some psychological intent. They often make scenes appear more real than real, maybe with a heightened clarity, textures that seem even sharper than reality, which can feel almost unsettling sometimes. They're using the photo as a tool, definitely, but they're adding their own unique, often amplified vision.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, especially for anyone listening who's trying to develop their own artistic style. I've heard people say that understanding realism is like a solid foundation for effective stylization. That seems kind of counterintuitive, right?
Right.
Why would you need to master reality just to then move away from it?
It might seem that way, yeah, but it's actually a crucial point. Think of it like this. Imagine you have to summarize a really complex article.
Okay.
To write a good summary, one that's effective and accurate, you first have to deeply understand the original subject matter, right? You have to read it thoroughly. If you don't grasp the original article, your summary is going to be weak, it'll miss key points.
Makes sense.
It's the same with art. Artists who are brilliant at stylization, people like, say, Ilya Kushtinov, Aaron Blaise, Ethan Becker, Glenn Keane, all known for these highly stylized characters, they often secretly, or sometimes quite openly, have a very strong foundation in realistic drawing and anatomy.
Really?
Absolutely. They understand the underlying structure, proportion, form, how light works, before they start to exaggerate, simplify, or distort it. That solid foundation allows them to push proportions and expressions in a way that feels believable and impactful, even within a highly non-realistic style. They know the rules before they break them effectively.
So realism isn't just a style. It's almost like a fundamental skill, maybe a language that actually enables other styles.
Wow.
That's a true aha moment right there.
Exactly. Now, let's maybe explore the other end of that spectrum, breaking from reality into abstraction and beyond.
Right, because obviously not all art is about showing things exactly as they appear in the world.
Yeah.
So how do we define abstract art at its core?
At its most fundamental, abstract art departs from physical reality. Instead of trying to make accurate depictions of recognizable subjects, abstract artists use shapes, colors, lines, forms, textures, the pure elements of art, to express ideas or emotions.
So the meaning isn't necessarily obvious.
Often not. The meaning is frequently subjective. Viewers interpret the work based on their own feelings, their own experiences, making it a very personal dialogue between the art and the individual looking at it.
And there's a range of abstraction, isn't there? It's not just like an on-off switch from realistic to abstract.
Precisely. It's more like a fascinating continuum.
Yeah.
At one end, you have realism, direct representation. Then you move into partial abstraction, where elements are still recognizable. You can tell it's a person or a landscape, but they're modified, simplified, distorted in some way. It references reality, but doesn't copy it.
Okay.
And then at the other end, you have total abstraction, which uses pure shapes, colors, and lines with no recognizable subject matter at all. It's almost like a musical composition, but made of color and form instead of sound.
And what about cubism? That often looks very abstract, fragmented, but you can usually still tell what the subject is somehow.
You're absolutely right. Cubism, pioneered by Picasso and Braque around 1900, is famous for breaking down subjects into geometric shapes and depicting multiple viewpoints simultaneously.
Yeah, seeing things from different angles at once.
Exactly. So, despite its fragmented and seemingly abstract appearance, it's actually more related to realism than total abstraction because the objects usually remain identifiable. You can still tell it's a face or a guitar, even if it's been deconstructed and shown from several angles all at the same time.
And for something that really gets straight to the point, with elegant simplicity, there's minimalism.
Yes, minimalism aims to express an idea with the fewest possible visual cues. It often uses simple geometric shapes, clean lines, stark contrasts. Think of Picasso's famous series of drawings of a bowl.
Oh yeah, where it gets simpler and simpler.
Exactly. Each drawing uses fewer and fewer lines until it's just a few essential strokes, yet it's still undeniably a bowl. Minimalism is also really popular in architecture and design, creating those modern, spacious rooms with an emphasis on just the bare essentials.
Okay. And then we get to the really weird stuff. Surrealism.
Yeah. Weird art or dream art is a common description. Surrealism looks like dream imagery. It takes real-world ideas and objects, but places them in highly unrealistic, illogical, often bizarre juxtapositions. Salvador Dali's melting clocks are probably the most famous example everyone thinks of.
Definitely. And to wrap up this section on breaking from reality, expressionism. That sounds like it's all about raw feeling, putting emotion way before objective reality.
It absolutely is. Expressionism, which emerged around the turn of the 20th century, aims to represent life as it feels to the artist, rather than how it objectively appears.
So truth over facts, in a way.
Kind of, yeah. Emotional truth over visual fact. Artists often use bold, unrealistic styles, distorted forms, vibrant, sometimes clashing colors, all to express intense emotions. They're prioritizing their subjective experience and trying to communicate that feeling directly to the viewer. Edvard Munch's The Scream, again, is perhaps the quintessential example. The distorted figure, the swirling, nightmarish landscape, it perfectly conveys that universal feeling of existential dread and anxiety.
Okay, so from expressing those really intense subjective feelings, Let's dive into two incredibly influential movements that really captured moments and emotions in their own unique ways. Impressionism and abstract expressionism. They both really shifted paradigms, didn't they? But in very different
They
contexts.
really did. These movements are fascinating because they both represent significant breaks from the artistic traditions of their time, but for very different reasons and ultimately with very distinct impacts on our history.
Let's start with Impressionism. What defines this iconic style that pretty much everyone recognizes, even if they don't know the name?
Right. Impressionism really formalized in Paris in the 1860s. It's instantly recognizable by its characteristic light, visible, often quite loose brushstrokes.
That dappled look.
Exactly, that dappled, shimmering look. It often has a dreamlike quality where details might be barely recognizable if you're standing right up close, but your brain effortlessly understands the subject, the whole scene, when you step back a bit.
Yeah, it clicks into place.
It does. The artists focus intensely on capturing light, how it looked at a specific moment, its changing qualities. They often painted en plein air, outdoors, to directly observe these fleeting effects. They depicted ordinary, contemporary subjects, landscapes, city scenes, people relaxing. They used unblended, vibrant colors, often placed side by side, and embraced open compositions. The goal was really to convey a fleeting impression of a moment rather than a polished, perfectly rendered academic scene.
I love that idea of capturing a fleeting moment, like a snapshot, but with paint. But how did this revolutionary style actually begin? I heard it wasn't exactly embraced with open arms at first.
Oh, that's putting it mildly. That's where the story gets really surprising and, frankly, quite rebellious. Impressionism began as a direct challenge to the very powerful, very strict Académie des Beaux-Arts and its annual salon.
The big official art show in Paris.
Exactly. The Salon was the absolute center of the Parisian art world. Getting accepted was crucial for an artist's career. But artists like Frederic Bazille, Monet, Degas, Pissarro, Renoir, they dreamed of artistic independence. They wanted to paint what they wanted, how they wanted, free from these arbitrary jury decisions and rigid traditional rules about subject matter and finish.
They were pushing boundaries.
They were, and after the devastating Franco-Prussian War in 1870, Paris was in ruins, but art actually became this powerful catalyst for revival. These artists, whose innovative ideas were often dismissed by the Salon jury as mere unfinished sketches, decided they'd had enough. They decided to form their own group, the Société Anonyme des Artistes Peintres, Sculpteurs, Graveurs, etc. Quite a mouthful.
So they basically decided, if you won't show us, we'll show ourselves. That takes some serious guts, going against the entire establishment like that.
It really did. In 1874, the Société Anonyme held their very first independent exhibition. And initially, it was a commercial disaster.
Oh, no.
Yeah, very few visitors came, and even fewer paintings actually sold. The critics, used to the highly polished academic paintings at the official salon, were mostly baffled or even outraged. They perceived these works as shockingly unfinished, just impressions.
And that's where the name came from.
Exactly. It was the critic Louis Leroy who famously looked at Claude Monet's painting, Impressions, Sunrise, that hazy atmospheric view of the harbor, and sarcastically wrote a review titled Exhibition of the Impressionists. He described Monet's painting as a mere impression, totally intending it as an insult, a dismissal of its supposed lack of finish.
Wow. He must have regretted that later.
You'd think so. But unwittingly, he gave the movement its enduring name.
And it actually caught on, despite the initial failure and all the critical disdain. That's incredible.
It did eventually. The initial failure was a blow, and the Société Anonyme eventually dissolved. But as Paris recovered economically, an expanding middle class emerged, creating this burgeoning market for smaller, more affordable paintings, exactly the kind of thing the Impressionists were often making. This gradually broadened their appeal and influence. So yeah, an initial insult became the banner for a movement that would fundamentally change art history forever, really paving the way for so many artistic freedoms we take for granted now.
What a story. Okay, then building on that groundwork laid by the Impressionists, we get post-Impressionism. How did that evolve from the Impressionist ideas? Was it just more of the same?
Not quite. Post-Impressionism emerged both as a reaction to and an extension of Impressionism. While it shared the freedom of brushwork and the bright colors, it often took the liberty of removing the need for realistic lighting and colors entirely.
Ah, okay, so pushing it further.
Exactly. Artists like Vincent van Gogh, for example, used color and brushstrokes not just to capture the light on a landscape, but to convey their own intense emotions and state of mind. The colors in his paintings often reflect how he felt about the scene, rather than depicting the actual colors of the landscape. They push the boundaries of form and expression much more into a subjective personal realm.
Which kind of leads us perfectly into a major force in American art history, abstract expressionism. It sounds like it carries a lot of weight, not just artistically, maybe politically too.
Absolutely. Abstract expressionism, or ABEX as it's often called, was a hugely significant post-World War II art movement. It originated in New York City in the 1940s and 50s. And you're right about the weight. It was incredibly important because it was the first truly American art movement to achieve major international acclaim.
And the government actually promoted it.
It did, yeah. It's a fascinating part of the story. The U.S. government, particularly during the Cold War, saw this new, bold, highly expressive, non-representational style as a powerful symbol of American democracy, individualism, and freedom, in contrast to the socialist realism being promoted in the Soviet Union. So they actively promoted the movement around the world through traveling exhibitions, seeing it as a form of cultural propaganda.
Wow, art as a Cold War weapon.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just about paint on canvas, it had this whole geopolitical context too. What actually defined the Abex style itself, apart from being abstract?
Well, it was predominantly abstract, as the name suggests. It really embodied the raw, emotional expression of the artists who were often referred to collectively as the New York School. These artists were generally not interested in traditional subject matter or trying to convey a specific literal meaning. In fact, they often stopped naming their works or gave them very neutral titles like untitled or just numbers.
To avoid guiding the viewer's interpretation.
Exactly. They aimed instead to evoke strong emotions and encourage individual interpretations through purely visual language, color, gesture, scale. Their paintings were frequently enormous, really large scale, designed to dominate the viewer's field of vision and create an immersive experience. And they often featured what's called an all-over composition, meaning there's no central focal point, the entire canvas is equally active, drawing your eye everywhere at once.
And within abstract expressionism, I remember hearing there were sort of two main approaches, right? How did they differ?
Yes, broadly speaking, there were two distinct groupings, though many artists blended aspects of both. First, you had action painting.
Like Jackson Pollock.
He's the quintessential example. Action painting, as the name suggests, really emphasized the physical act of painting itself. Jackson Pollock, famously nicknamed Jack the Dripper, would pour, drip, splash, and splatter commercial paints directly onto huge canvases spread out on the floor. This radical technique allowed him to break completely from traditional easel painting and express his inner psyche freely, spontaneously. The painting became a direct record of his energetic, almost ritualistic action.
The painting is the event almost.
Precisely. And the other main grouping, color field painting, sounds much more meditative, doesn't it?
It does. Less frantic dripping, maybe.
Definitely less frantic. Color field painting adopted a more cerebral, contemplative approach. Artists like Mark Rothko are key here. They created deceptively simple compositions featuring large, expansive areas or fields of flat color.
Those big rectangles of color.
Exactly. Rothko, for instance, applied very thin layers, almost washes of paint, to create these glowing, luminous hues with soft, hazy edges. The goal was to provoke a deeply contemplative, almost spiritual response in the viewer through the sheer immersive power of color and scale. It's a much quieter but no less intense experience than action painting.
What influenced these artists to create such a groundbreaking movement, especially one that ended up getting so much international attention, partly thanks to that government backing?
It was a confluence of factors, really. ABEX was profoundly influenced by the trauma and devastation of World War II and the sense of human irrationality it exposed. There was also the prevailing existentialist philosophy at the time, questioning meaning and purpose in a seemingly chaotic world.
Heavy stuff.
Definitely. Artistically, they drew heavily from European modernism, Cubism, Dada, Surrealism. Many European artists had fled to New York during the war, bringing their ideas with them. But they also found inspiration closer to home in Native American art, particularly sand painting, and also in the spontaneity of Asian calligraphy. They blended all these diverse influences, and crucially, they were fortunate to have strong support from influential figures like the wealthy collector Peggy Guggenheim and powerful art critics like Clement Greenberg, who championed their work and helped them gain recognition and financial success. It was really a perfect storm of social context, philosophical ideas, artistic innovation, and critical support that allowed this uniquely American artistic voice to explode onto the global stage.
We've covered so much ground today, from the basic definition of style through history across the spectrum of reality. But there's one last crucial distinction that I think helps tie it all together. the difference between an artist's unique voice and their artistic style. Can we unpack that a bit?
Yes, absolutely. This is often where artists themselves and art lovers too get a little bit tangled up. And it's a really important concept for truly understanding an artist's whole body of work, their journey.
So, what's the core difference?
Okay. So what we call an artist's voice is their overarching unique expression. It's like their artistic sound, if you will. It's their profound why for creating art in the first place. The underlying essence, the core message or perspective that connects all their work, regardless of what it actually looks like on the surface.
Ah, I like that analogy of a speaking voice.
Yeah.
So, while an artist has this singular, consistent voice, how do we see them express it through these different styles we've been talking about?
Exactly. Style refers to the diverse ways that single voice is expressed visually. It's the how. An artist can, and very often does, have many different styles throughout their career, all within one cohesive voice.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, think about your own speaking voice. You have one distinct, recognizable voice, right? But you use many different styles of speaking depending on the situation. You might be conversational like we are now, or maybe you sound angry or happy, or perhaps more formal if you're giving a presentation.
Or even lecturing.
Or lecturing, exactly. All those are still your voice, but they're expressed stylistically differently to suit the context or the emotion you want to convey. It's the same for artists.
That makes so much sense. It means an artist isn't necessarily limited to just one look, which I think can be a huge misconception sometimes. People expect consistency in the look.
Not at all. And that's freeing for artists, too. Some artists, like the Italian painter Giorgio Morandi, famously painted almost the exact same collection of bottles and jars for nearly 60 years. His style was very singular, very consistent visually, but it was still clearly his voice, expressing this quiet contemplation, this focus on form and light. Conversely, you have an artist like Gerhard Richter, who actually professes to have no style. He works in everything from hyperrealistic still lifes and portraits to huge abstract squeegee paintings, sculpture, photography. His output is incredibly diverse visually.
It's a total different style.
Totally different styles. Yet, if you look at his diverse body of work as a whole, you start to understand that all these seemingly disparate expressions still come from his distinct artistic voice, his consistent underlying artistic philosophy, his exploration of perception and representation. The range of artistic expression can be truly limitless, but the authentic voice often remains.
Okay, so what are some of those key ingredients, those qualities that when they combine really define an artist's unique style, which in turn becomes the expression of their voice?
Well, one framework suggests 6 key qualities. First is how an artist uses the fundamental elements and principles of art, those basic tools like color, shape, line, composition, texture. Think of someone like Paul Klee, whose work shows this deep, almost scientific exploration of color theory and abstract forms that was central to his style.
Okay, the building blocks, what else?
Second, the medium and materials they choose to work with. The actual art supplies and surfaces can hugely influence the look and feel. There's a great story about the artist Jen Stark, who apparently discovered her breakthrough signature style using just cheap, colorful construction paper when she was studying abroad in France. That initial material then profoundly influenced all her subsequent, much more complex, intricate cut paper sculptures. The material dictated the style in a way.
Wow. And I guess the subjects or categories they choose to work in must play a role too.
They do. That's genre. Does an artist consistently prefer abstraction, or landscapes, or portraits, or realism? Some artists stick very closely to one genre, finding endless variation within it. Others love to explore many different genres throughout their career. Then there's theme. This is about the larger message or meaning that ties their work together, even if the style changes.
So, like a recurring idea.
Exactly. For instance, an artist might dedicate a whole series of works, perhaps in different styles or mediums, to celebrating unsung women from history. Or maybe they consistently explore the theme of environmental change or the unreasonable standards placed on mothers. Even if the visual look changes, that core theme provides a powerful cohesiveness, expressing their voice.
And as we discussed earlier, we're all influenced by the world around us, artists included.
Absolutely. That's the 5th quality, influence. Teachers, art history itself, current events, cultural interests, even the art being made by their peers. All of this feeds into an artist's choices, whether they realize it or not. Think about those Paint Like Me classes you sometimes see advertised students intentionally try to replicate a teacher's style, but over time, if they continue, they inevitably start to infuse their own unique influences and experiences.
And finally, the most personal one.
And finally, perhaps most profoundly, is personal experience. An individual's life events, their background, their health, their nationality, their identity, all of this profoundly influences their art making, their voice. Frida Kahlo's work is a powerful example. Her paintings directly speak to her debilitating physical pain following an accident, and also her intense, unfulfilled desire for motherhood. Her life is inextricably woven into her style and voice. All these qualities combine in unique ways for each artist to create their style, which is ultimately the undeniable expression of their unique voice.
What a journey we've been on today. We started right back at the beginning, trying to understand the fundamental definition of artistic style, figuring out how it's different from those broader art movements.
Yeah, and breaking down its core components, everything from the basic visual elements like line and color to techniques, subject matter, and those deeper layers of personal narrative and philosophy.
We then took that whirlwind tour through history, touching on prominent styles from ancient art and folk art through the Renaissance, Baroque, Rococo, Romanticism, Art Nouveau, all the way up to modern and contemporary expressions like graffiti.
And we spent some time dissecting that fascinating spectrum of reality in art, contrasting realism, photorealism, and hyperrealism, and hitting on that really crucial point about how understanding realism provides such a solid foundation for effective stylization.
Definitely a key takeaway. And we didn't stop there. We dove into how iconic styles like Impressionism, with its surprising origin story,
Right. Born from rebellion and an insult.
exactly, and abstract expressionism, with its huge scale and emotional power, really captured fleeting moments and profound feelings in very different ways.
And finally, we explored what truly defines an artist's unique voice, understanding how all these diverse styles we talked about can actually spring from one cohesive artistic identity, like different threads all coming from the same loom.
So, thinking about everything we've discussed, what insights or styles resonated most with you listening? As you consider the artists and artworks you encounter from now on, perhaps in a gallery, online, or even just out in the world, how might you approach looking at art differently now, maybe with a new appreciation for all the deliberate choices and influences behind each piece?
Yeah, maybe looking beyond just liking or disliking it to understanding why it looks the way it does.
Exactly. And as the painter Edgar Degas profoundly put it, art is not what you see, but what you make others see. Maybe consider how understanding artistic style empowers you to move beyond simply seeing an artwork. It allows you to interpret, to connect with it, and to appreciate it on a much more personal and informed level. So we invite you to reflect on what you now make others, or perhaps more importantly, yourself see when you engage with art, maybe uncovering brand new layers of meaning, even in masterpieces you thought you already knew well.